And we're having a press conference today on some recent actions of the Biden administration as they pertain to Alaska and, quite frankly, the harm that they do to Alaska. So just a little bit of history. Under the last administration, under President Trump, there was a concerted effort to provide opportunities for Alaska, in our especially in our resource development sphere, as well as potential of international railroad crossings between the border between Alaska and Canada. That has ceased under this new administration. And I just want to highlight a series of the most recent attempts at undermining Alaska's ability to fulfill its role in the Union of 50 states under a federalist system, as well as being able to provide revenue, jobs, opportunity, wealth for its people. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And we also have some representatives from the various industries in the state of Alaska that have been affected and will be affected. And quite frankly, we're going to talk about also what our attempts are going to be to push back on this, because we just think it's simply wrong. It's bad for Alaska, and quite frankly, it's bad for the entire world, and we'll explain that here in a moment. But since January, when President Biden came into office, a number of decisions have been made that directly impact Alaska, and in the opinion of many of us, not for the better. So, for example, today, the Biden administration, the EPA, is filing legal proceedings to restart the Clean Water Act, the 404C veto process for Bristol Bay, undoing the work of the past administration. Preemptive vetoes of any type, for any project, of any permit by any company, is dangerous, and will be opposed by our state because of the precedents that will set. Just yesterday, the Biden administration announced plans to alter the entire NPRA development plan, the entire plan. We've got a situation where they're going to be trying to cancel ANWR leases, stopping all new leases on federal public lands for oil and gas. We have the reversing of the roadless rule in the Tongass National Forest, changing waters of the United States, trying to control more land and water within Alaska. The 3030 program, which essentially will lock up not just land, but waters around Alaska if it ever takes place in the form and fashion that some folks want it to. The attempts are also undermining Alaska's mineral potential. And this is an interesting one, because the mineral potential, along with oil and gas, and really any resource extraction that we do here in Alaska, is really done under the best environmental regulations you're going to find anywhere. And really what's at the heart here is that this administration, for reasons that I and many others don't understand, believes that if you stop projects from happening here in America, here in Alaska, that somehow that saves the environment, that somehow the demand for these resources will magically appear from other places in which the environment will not be harmed, in which, for example, child labor issues will not be impacted. And quite honestly, it doesn't make any sense for folks that are following this. The demand for oil and gas will still be there. The demand for rare earths, critical minerals, metals will still be there. The demand for timber will still be there. So the demand for what Alaska has to offer within the confines of the United States, within our borders, that could help create jobs here in Alaska, create wealth here in Alaska, create revenue here in Alaska, create opportunities not just for the state but local economies as well as businesses, is somehow viewed as problematic by this administration and those that support the administration's actions. But what you never hear, what is never discussed, is if we don't do it here and we do it over there, what does over there look like when we do it over there? Because we have no control over the actions of foreign countries. We have no control over the actions of corporations that are extracting resources outside of Alaska, outside of America, and overseas. You can only imagine, and if we're all going to be honest, we know for a fact that in many of these locales where these resources are being extracted to once again meet the demands that will always be there, the environment is not being preserved. The environment is not being saved. Wealth is really, in many cases, being created for foreign actors that aren't necessarily friends of the United States. This does not help our national security. And so the question that we have really for this administration is why and when will it stop? What's the end game? What's the goal? Is the goal to turn Alaska into a subsidiary of the Department of Interior? Is the goal to weaken Alaska and America by depending upon foreign actors, many of which are not friends of the United States, for our national security, our key metals, minerals, oil and gas? So quite frankly, a lot of this makes no sense at all. It would be akin, for example, if the Biden administration said, let's say to the state of Washington, we're going to authorize that the Army Corps of Engineers tear down the 23 plus dams on the Columbia and the Snake River, that the manufacturing of airlines is detrimental to the environment, and that wheat farming is also detrimental to the environment. So we're going to do everything we can to stop it. I would imagine that it wouldn't take very long for the folks in the state of Washington, including the Seattle City Council, to register their outrage at trying to destroy a state within this federal system. And that's what's happening with Alaska. And the irony, as we've mentioned before, with regard to Alaska is simply this. In order for us to become a state, the discussions in the formation of our Statehood Act really compelled us to collectivize our resources under the government to be developed to pay our way. And really that's all we're asking is let's follow what the Statehood Act laid out, our own Constitution, and quite frankly, what really is a key component in making Alaska a viable state is to be able to create opportunities for its people, create opportunities in wealth, revenue, preserve the environment. I think it's hard to argue that the environment is going to be best preserved overseas as opposed to here in Alaska with our regulations. And so we are going to continue the process of pushing back against the Biden administration. Well, what does this mean? Is it just words? No, it's not. We want to thank the legislature that approved the $4 million in funding to fight for our state defense, our ability to carry out our ability to develop our resources as once again lined out in the Statehood Act as well as the Constitution of Alaska. We're going to be asking for the legislature, unfortunately, for even more funding because we don't see any end to this. We see this continuing and probably gathering steam. So in essence, you have the 49th state that is fighting its own federal government in an effort for the 49th state, Alaska, to be able to fulfill its destiny as one of the states within the federal system, to be able to create opportunities for its own people and provide revenue for its government. This can't be understated. And we know there's a lot of groups, a lot of entities that are not necessarily located in the state of Alaska that are cheering the Biden administration on. But we can tell you that there are a lot of Alaskans and a lot of organizations and a lot of trade associations that are not cheering this on. And so once again, we want to highlight what's occurring, what has recently occurred. Unfortunately, we believe this is just the beginning. This is the beginning of this administration. But we're going to do everything we can to stand up and face this challenge because we believe we're right. We believe that if you truly want to protect the environment, do it here in Alaska, do it here in America. If you're truly sincere about providing opportunities and jobs for Americans and Alaskans, you do it here. If you're truly committed to creating wealth and providing for our national security, so we don't have to rely on some of these foreign actors, you do it here. Everything would lead one to believe it should be done here. And that's what we're employing the Biden administration to really think about. And in the meantime, we're going to gear up for what is going to be, unfortunately, a long slog in the courts to deal with a number of these issues. And so with that, we're going to have a number of representatives from the various industries in the state of Alaska come up and make some comments as well. So we're going to start with Katie Capozzi with the Alaska Chamber, and we're going to go through a whole list of other folks, and when we're done at the end, we'll take some questions.